those that believe that I'm anti-police, it's simply not the case. I'm anti-police brutality, and I need not remind you that the only loss and the greatest loss in all of this was that of Freddie Gray's life.
Baltimore prosecutor Marilyn Mosby today, after all remaining charges against the officers in the Freddie Gray case were dropped. Continuing now on the Steve Malzberg Show with this reminder that you too can get involved in our conversation by calling us at 1-877-Newsmax. That's 1-877-639-7629. In addition to our telecommuting friend, Steve Malzberg, we're also joined tonight via Skype by Bernard Kerik. Bernie, of course, the former New York Police Commissioner. He also served as the interim Minister of the Interior in Iraq. And we should also note that Bernie is the author of the bestseller, From Jailer to Jailed. Bernie, what is your reaction to the move to drop all the charges in the Freddie Gray case?
You know what, JD, these are charges that shouldn't have been brought in the first place, and I said it from the first day that this all started. I think the prosecutor overreached. I think this is a clear demonstration of that. I was really saddened to hear her rant today for more than 13 minutes, speaking as if, these officers were still actually guilty when in fact she had just dropped the remaining charges. This is a case that should not have been brought, and I think the prosecutor forgets her job is not to prosecute, her job is to investigate, and I think she cowered to the public scrutiny, the public criticism, the public outcry at the time in Baltimore, and I think anybody in this arena, police, lawyers, so forth and so on, that followed this case, I think they would agree.
Commissioner, Steve Malzberg here. She held the press conference in the spot where Freddie Gray was arrested. She said that there was bias. She said he was murdered. I mean, her message today was, I believe, part to incite again. I mean, how did she get away with this as an officer of the law?
You know what, Steve? I felt the same exact thing in listening to her. It was her decision. She's the state prosecutor. It was her decision to drop the charges. She decided to drop the charges. If she decided to drop the charges, then why was she standing out there ranting and raving that these cops were basically murderers? And that's what it sounded like. So, I think it was, this was another political theater, if you will. And I think it shouldn't have happened. She's an officer of the court. She has a job to do, and I think she's lost sight of what that job really is.
Let's go to the phones and see what Americans are thinking about this case. Out to Loretta, Wisconsin at 1-877-Newsmax. Greg is on the line. Greg, welcome to Newsmax TV.
Hello, JD. Hello, Steve.
Hey.
Hi, Greg. How are you?
Hey, I'm fine. And thank God you guys are on the air. Otherwise, we wouldn't get the truth.
Well, we're happy to bring it to you, pal. You got a comment or question for Bernie?
Well, first of all, I don't think anybody should be tried in the public's eye until they have evidence. And I'm sick and tired of seeing people tried, especially like Trump all the time. They're always trying them before they get any evidence, and they take everything out of context.
And of course, you're talking about the courtroom of public opinion. But Bernie, when it comes to the courtroom and conduct in the city of Baltimore, in that county in Maryland, and you have Marilyn Mosby, who got out in the wake of the riots and stood up and started to preen and posture. And I saw reports somewhere that some fashion magazines had contacted the prosecutor to do like photo shoots as if she were some sort of celebrity. And then today, to hear what she had to say, how much is the toxicity of narcissism and fame a portion of her calculation, and the curious and perhaps inciting statement she offered earlier today?
You know what, JD? I think, most prosecutors, for the most part, around this country, they have a job to do. They do that job. They do it well. It's one of the most important jobs in our nation. But you have prosecutors out there that lose sight of what their jobs really are. They're out for the victory and not justice. This was a case where this prosecutor took a case where there was clearly not enough evidence to convict. And we already know that from the 3 acquittals and the 1 hung jury, if you will, and the fact that she decided to drop the last 2 cases. This was her decision. She had to make that decision based on some judgment, and the judgment is she didn't have the case in the first place. It should have never happened.
Bernie, doesn't she fit right in with the rhetoric of the president, the rhetoric of the attorney general? And unfortunately, the scene set at the convention last night, where the Mothers for the Cause, which consisted of mothers of people like Trayvon Martin and Michael Brown and others, took to the stage and got to speak and slam cops.
Well, listen, I was extremely disturbed by some of the speakers last night, many of the speakers at the convention. The fact that cops were slandered, the fact that, they have Michael Brown's mother speaking. This guy was a thug who was involved in a strong-arm robbery, who attempted to kill a cop, disarm him, take his gun, and was eventually killed during the process of resisting arrest. That is not a role model. You know who the role models are? The role models are those 5 Dallas cops and the others killed in Baton Rouge. Those are role models. But I didn't see their wives, their mothers. I didn't see any of them on that stage talking about problems in our communities, talking about problems in our country. None of them. It's pretty disturbing. And I one last thing, I got to get this in there. If you're a cop, if you're a veteran, if you're an active military service member, I find it hard to believe that you could vote for Hillary Clinton. I just do.
Let's go back to the phone lines, Bernie and Steve, at 1-877-639-7629, 1-877-Newsmax. From Milford, Ohio, we welcome Larry back to our programming. Hi, Larry.
Hi, JD. How are you?
Okay, thanks.
I'll say hi to Steve, too.
Hi, Jay. Larry, sorry.
Yeah, the only thing I wanted to say is I wanted to point out Laura Ingraham the other night, last week, where she called out the news media for their left-wing slant. And I guess I'm wondering, when will the populace become more aware that the fourth estate, what I guess I've heard called fourth estate, has really turned into a 5th column for this this liberal fascist movement of the left. I mean, that's, just like they focused, the media focused on this prosecutor, and I want to call it seditious word, and rather than focusing on, okay, how has this affected the lives of those police officers who were finally let off the hook because nothing had been done wrong on their part. And I won't say what they did right or what they did wrong. I wasn't there. I wasn't at the trials. I wasn't at the O.J. Simpson trial. So I don't know who was right and who was wrong. I'll trust the people who were in the courtroom at the time. But what I don't trust anymore is I don't trust the media.
And I'll talk more about that on Newsmax Prime in a little while, Larry, but I want to get to this point that is a legal point. I understand the officers involved in this have filed suit against Marilyn Mosby, alleging she intentionally filed false charges. Do you think they will be able to bring that case in the environment there in Baltimore, Bernie?
Well, I think it's something that has to be looked at. I think it's something that that has to be considered. JD, sometimes in this country, when you have a prosecutor that is swayed by public opinion, swayed by the media, and doesn't do the job they're supposed to do, you have to wonder, where the justice system is going. And I think we're losing sight of that. So I think these officers have a right to file litigation, to look at the prosecutor, her actions. She definitely was overreaching. And I think the fact that she dropped the charges today.
And Bernie,
is a
don't
clear
forget,
demonstration there's a problem.
at the beginning, she told the protesters, I hear you. This is for you. I mean, so she right away, she was an activist from the get-go. I hope the lawsuit succeeds. And by the way, the judge in the 3 acquittals was a black judge. And the jury, in the hung jury, had blacks on the jury. So to stand there today and say there was bias in the system, outrageous.
And the only bias we have is that provided by the clock, as our time is running out. Bernie Kerik, via Skype, the author of the book From Jailer to Jailed. Bernie, we appreciate your time. And Steve, get ready. Our old buddy Brent Badowski, with a viewpoint from the left, will join us next here on the Steve Malzberg Show. So stay tuned.